to today's social system mapping sumApp Tech Talk for May 25th, 2020. Your host today will be me, Christine Capper, as usual, and Tim Hansen, who's usually also part of the Tech Talk, if not other places, but this is his core place. This is the third session in the month for our standard monthly sessions, of which on the second Monday, we usually have an on-ramp session, which is an intro level for people who want to look at other people's social system maps if they've never seen one. And we all love looking at each other's maps. So that's a map sharing session at a sort of a high level. That's always on the second Monday, and I have not figured out who's going to share next time, but we will get that figured out soon. The third Monday of the month, we have a deep dive conversation. Usually something that has emerged out of our on-ramp intro sessions or just out of ongoing discussions that people want to talk some more about. And then the fourth Monday of every month, we have our Tech Talk, which today is about advanced loading of pre-existing data. For those of you who don't know this yet, I've started doing weekly office hours, a half an hour twice a week, so that if you're in the middle of a project and you have a question and you need to get it answered pretty soon, you usually have only a couple days to wait for that. Obviously, you can also put your questions in the Slack, but if you just really need to talk, I'm available a couple times a week for that. And if I have to cancel, I will post it in Slack. So far, I haven't canceled. So for today's agenda, we're in the greetings and agenda review right now, and we'll do some brief chat introductions. And then we're going to demonstrate this tool that Tim has made basically for himself for use with our clients, but that he's willing to share with people. And it's written in, well, I'll get into it in a minute. And then, so we'll hopefully be able to get through all of the advanced loading of pre-existing data, have a little bit of Q&A, wrap up and close. And for those of you, I think most of you are familiar with this, but we usually stop at that. This is formally scheduled for an hour. If you need to leave at the top of the hour, that's great. We will stop and say goodbye. And then if anyone has more questions or wants to hang out and just chat about anything open-ended, there's an extra optional half an hour when Tim and Kara and I will stick around and answer more questions. So let's get started with, I'm just looking for my chat box. With introducing ourselves. So let's start with our name and pronouns and location. Hi, Diane. Can we hear you now?
Hi.
Yay. Okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
So if everybody could go ahead and put in the chat your name, your pronouns, and your location, that would be great.
Okay, where's chat?
Okay. So if you, who asked that?
Ed.
Ed. Okay. Can you see the bottom of your Zoom dashboardy thing there? If you hover towards the bottom of the Zoom screen, you should get a little panel with icons, like a mute icon and a stop video icon and some other icons.
I got participants. Oh, there we go, chat.
Yep, if you hit, yeah, sometimes it sits in the icon bar and sometimes it's in the ellipsis that says more, and then you have to pop that open. Okay. Is anyone else having trouble finding the chat?
I found it, but how do I add it? Is it to or type? Oh, type message here.
Yep.
Okay.
To everyone. Arkansas. A couple of you are from Arkansas. Boulder and Germany, and the Pacific Northwest. Okay. Next, to put in the chat for our introductions is just something you're appreciating today. Doesn't have to be about this session, just something. Oops. Spring and a clear sky. Nice. The tea, flavorful tea is a good thing. Household projects are a good thing. Okay. Plants. Lastly, what are you most curious about in today's session? If you could put that in the chat, that would be great. Congratulations on your granddaughter, Richard Edelman. And Gladys, there is a whole lot that can be done. And you don't, I mean, our intention is that you can start simple and not make it too complex for yourself, but that there is, because everybody, as they start to get into it, they start to want more and they start to want to add this ability and that ability. And we've tried to accommodate those abilities, but don't feel like you have to start at the deep end and overwhelm yourself is my advice there. Okay, and then I'm going to do one more quick thing, which I just want to see where people are actually. Oh, Kara, there's a poll. Can you open the poll? I just want to see where everyone's sort of at in their experience. And so Kara just opened a poll. If you'd go ahead and answer that, and then we'll give a minute and look at the results. And if your situation doesn't fit exactly, I apologize. I did this like 5 minutes before we started and I was just sort of winging it. And Kara, I think you can see how many people have done it.
If Tim and I aren't answering, I think or if you and I aren't answering, we have all of our answers.
Pardon me?
It's 7 of 9, so if we're not participating ourselves, but I don't know if they count me in the
Okay,
host.
let's go ahead and then share just look at the results.
So we have the most of people in the.
Sorry, I think you can show them.
I don't know.
Does it give you that option?
There we go. Boop.
Yay!
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, so clearly there's a number of you who are actually working on this and wanting to get clear on this process. So that's great. Cool. Okay. So first, okay, Kara, can you put I'm going to stop sharing. Kara, can you put the link to the instructions? Today, okay, so what we're going to do next is there's a lot of technical stuff going on. And so we made an instruction sheet. Like I said, there's a lot of pages to it. We're going to walk you through them all, but I think it will be really helpful for everyone if you also open up the sheet and walk through it with us. So looks like most of you are in there. Okay, so, and also along the lines of there's a lot going on here. We just want to make a couple disclaimers, which are that okay, first of all, this is only going to work in Excel. the header maker is not something that we ever set out to be a product or a service that sumApp or greater than the sum provides. This is just something that as we've worked with our clients over the last 5 years, and they have gotten sort of more and more sort of higher expectations and more demanding about what they want in their maps, we've accommodated them. And one of the things that, so Tim has just sort of gradually created this VBA code, because he knows how to do that, to help him manage the process of revisions and uploading of new data, et cetera. So he's put hundreds and hundreds of hours into this thing, and he's always tweaking it, and it's not perfect, and it's probably never going to be perfect. And so I just want to say that the other thing to note is that what we're going to talk about now is really opening up like a floodgate of data complexity. And if you're not really clear, like data, like I talk about data hygiene, or if you're not ready to get really into, you know, the dots and the commas and the just the duplications, the messiness of it, it's, of course, we love for you to be part of the session and we love for you to learn, but just note that we're sort of jumping off the deep end here, and it's your responsibility to understand where you're trying to go with your data and what you're trying to, what your goals are and how to clean data up, et cetera. This tool is meant to help make that as easy as possible, but there's no such thing as foolproof when it comes to moving data from one place to another. So just be prepared for that. And so if you're like me, who doesn't have a super high frustration tolerance level for complicated data, hand it off to somebody like Tim, who is very patient and can break it down to the teeniest, tiniest, nitpickiest thing, which drives me crazy. Okay, but we have these instructions, so if you need to hand this off to somebody who's more patient with it, you at least have this resource. Some other resources, just to know, Kara will send all the resources that we referenced today. She will send all of those in a follow-up email with today's recording within the next 36 hours. There's also the knowledge base Slack. Be on our map if you're not already on it. My office hours you can jump onto in these sessions. Okay, so having said all of that, Tim and I are kind of going to go back and forth. So when we talk about pre-existing data, we're talking about anything that you already know about the members in your network that you want to put into sumApp and not ask them again, because you already know the answer. You know things like their gender identities, you know things like maybe what state they live in or what country they live in, etc. And someone's typing. I was hoping we wouldn't be doing that in here because this is going to be anyway. Maybe that was Tim. Anyway, put comments in Slack, or anyway, I'm gonna stop talking about that. Sorry. Where was I going? Okay, you know stuff about them and you want that stuff to just show up in the survey. In order to get the stuff to just show up in the survey, we talked last month, and if you missed last month's session and this is actually important to you, I would go back to last month's session to get the basics about loading pre-existing data. And okay, I think I've already said everything important. So Tim, I'm going to have you go into, so we're on the Prepare the Header Maker page, which is page, where's my page numbers? I need to see them to help navigate. Okay, so we're on page 2. And Tim, you can go ahead and share your screen and start to walk through and just show them how to download it and enable it and get going. And you're muted. Mr. Hansen. And you're still muted if you're talking, I can't tell.
Okay, there we
Okay.
go. All
Okay.
right. Share your screen. Sorry, I'm not very good at
We're
this.
seeing, no, we're seeing your screen. We just need you to go to the
Do
instructions.
you see this?
Yes.
Do you see the header maker? Do you see this data?
Yep.
The pink button, the
Yep.
old data.
Yep.
Okay, alrighty.
But I want you to show them downloading it and enabling it.
Uh-huh. Okay. I gotta get rid of this. Hold on.
Sorry, guys. I should have. So
Yeah, I
just,
didn't know I was gonna be doing that. Okay.
yeah.
Well, you got to start by downloading, I guess. So you click the link there, and you go there, and then you download it right here with this, and that will download it to your computer.
And then you need to
And
go. I'll shut up.
because it's on Zoom, it takes a long time. So there you go. So then you would just then click on it and open it up, which I already have it open.
But there's a couple other pieces, Tim.
Uh-huh.
Enable. There's
Oh,
two
yeah.
enables.
Okay, hold on.
So sorry,
Let me
folks,
get rid of this one.
Tim was tweaking it this weekend to try and make it more user-friendly for you guys and ended up running into a big snag. And we didn't even know if we were going to do this session until an hour ago because when he went to bed last night, he thought it wasn't going to work and we were going to pivot and woke up with the answer. So, but that means
So when you open it, it's going to ask you for permission because there's a bunch of VBA code back there, and you need to say it's okay for it to run on your computer. So you just go through the little pop-ups that ask for enabling it like that.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
So then if you go to the next page, there's the overall workflow, which is reflected in the tabs at the bottom. So this just tells you, so the first tab is we're going to plug in our raw data. The second tab is if you have an option list, and Tim will walk you through that in a minute. You'll put those in the third tab, the data prep, then the validator, and there's some steps you need to take to get your data ready to be loaded, your actual options. And then you're going to walk through Tim, pretend the instruction tab doesn't have a number because my numbers are based from tab 2. But anyway, the last 2 tabs, you're going to end up going through one column at a time. You put the column into the second to the last tab, and then you walk through it. So we're going to walk you through that, but that's the overall workflow. So Tim, let's go ahead.
A quick question. Where's the link to download this stuff?
Do you have the instructions that Kara?
No, I don't have it up. So
Kara, can you put the link to the instructions in the chat again? So Edwin, if you open that, the link is sort of towards the it's at the top of the second page. Okay, so Tim, let's have you go to just quickly walk through putting the raw data into the raw data sheet.
Okay, well, there's some pre-existing data in there just to allow you to play with it. But when you want to actually put in your own data, you can just hit the clear old data and it will clear everything. And then you go to your data and you have to load it in the format it shows here. So you have to put your first name, last name field there, your email field here. These can be empty if you don't have any second or third email options for people, and segment, which is a data that is pertinent to sumApp, and you wouldn't have that in your pre-existing data unless you downloaded it out of sumApp. And this can be empty. And then this right here are all the fields of your data, all the questions from your pre-existing survey. Then go after those first 6 fields, and you would put them in there. The reason I have the headers colored is the one thing you need to know about your data to use this is you have to know, does this question, is it going to be a checkbox, a text field, a text input, a radio button? You have to know in advance what kind of survey question you want it to be. I put a little key here to help myself because I can't always remember. If you have 50 fields, it's really hard to remember if what kind of survey question you're creating. So I just made a little key here for myself so I can keep that in mind. So this little light blue is going to be a checkbox. The yellow is going to be a text area. The orange is going to be a radio button, and this is going to be a select field. So so that I use that because this, again, you need to know what kind of survey question you're creating.
So then there's the pink button at the top. Yeah.
Yep.
Just,
And then when you get your data in there, just this way, none of this data in this tab gets changed. So if you kind of mess things up, you can come back. You don't have to go look for your data and re-enter it. So you put it in here once, get the kind of questions that you want, and then just click that button. And it says, hey, it's going to overwrite all the data in here. And so now we're ready to start creating data for sumApp.
okay. So, but there's another step that we'll take. So we're going to move to page, I'm sorry, where are my page numbers? The next page, the page that says the full options list sheet. Now, there's a difference between, you might have some data that has, it's just open-ended text, or for which whatever answers are there is good enough. And you don't need to, well, let me say this another way. Sometimes you've done a survey. There were, let's say, 10 options in the survey, and 7 of them have been selected by the people who have already taken the survey. So you've got 7 options existing in your column, but there are 3 options that nobody selected. And so the header maker can't find those options from the column. And so we need to make sure that if that's the case, if there might be options that don't show up in the actual data set, but that do need to be included in the option list, we need to prep this sheet so that the header maker can figure all that out and find those options. So Tim, you can talk about that.
Okay, so in your data that you have, it has the question name. In this case, you know, at which level does your organization initiative operate? And then it has all this pre-existing data. And all of these are separate options from wherever the data came from. So say it was a checkbox. This is, it got downloaded as a comma separated field. Somebody chose global, national, regional. Here, just national, here, local, regional. So again, so somebody might, just like Christine said, someone might not have chosen all the possible options. So here we have the question name, and then we have all the options that were possible from the actual survey. And so we just create an option list for our checkbox. And then so for every field that's going to be, that has an option list, and checkboxes have option lists. Select boxes have option lists, and radio buttons have option lists. So we must go here and put in the question name, just as it shows in the raw data, and all of the options that are possible.
And so each option, if it's not clear, each option goes into a separate cell beneath the question.
Mm-hmm.
Clear? Okay. And then, so now, go ahead,
Yep.
Tim.
And then again here, just for my own sake, I color coordinated them so I know what they're going to be.
Okay, so once we've got the options defined correctly and the raw data is in there. Then we need to go and prep the data. And at this step, what we're doing is we're not defining the headers yet. We're simply making it so that the data in the columns, we're going to do two things here. One is validate the functional fields, which we talked about in our last session, so I'm not going to go into that. But we're going to validate the functional fields, and then we're going to take the questions in, or the options in the columns, and prepare them to be loaded. So for some of you will know this, but sumApp and Kumu understand different options. The way they can read the different options is if they're separated with a pipe. So if things are separated with a comma, it will just treat it like a big run-on paragraph. So what we need to do is go through and pipe separate the different options. And so that's what we're going to do to get the data in the columns prepared to be loaded before we actually make the headers for the columns.
Okay, so if you weren't here last time, if you click the green button, it's just going to go through these fields here and make sure that there's a first name, make sure there's a last name, and make sure there's no duplicate emails. And make sure the emails have a proper format. It's not missing, say, the .com or the @ okay. So the first thing we need to do then is we know here, so here, these are all comma separated, and we need them to be pipe separated. I created this little thing for replacing the delimiter when they're the wrong delimiter. So what we do is we just
in tech terms, delimiter means this is the end of this cell, go to the next cell. So delimiter is what separates the content of one cell from the other cell. So go ahead, sorry, Tim.
So if you need to do that, if you're downloading your data out of sumApp, it's going to come already with these pipes between them, which is what we want. But if it came from a different tool like SurveyMonkey or something, it's probably going to have commas instead of pipes. So what we do is we click this, and then we want to change this field. So we click on that and we hit OK. And then we want to change the comma to a pipe. So I put a comma, and I know it's comma space delimited, so I'm putting the space in there. You don't need to. And then we click OK, and we see that everything's been changed to a pipe. All the commas have been replaced. And that's why we need our full option list to allow us to do that. And then
so Tim, are you saying that this column is somehow reading from the full option list?
yes,
So
it's finding the option and placing
and figuring out that there's a separator.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what that's doing.
Okay.
The second field, this is a little more complicated one because you can see the options have commas themselves in it, and so we have to figure out which comma to replace. We can't just replace all the commas with pipes. Again, this is why we have the full option list to let us know where an option ends and a new one begins. So this tells us which comma to replace. So we just go through the same thing. We click that. We click the header we want to change. Again, it's a comma. And I know there's a space there, but you can leave the space out again if you want. And you just click OK. And now we can see that the proper commas have been replaced by pipes. So you can see here, there's a pipe. You can see here. So we only replaced the comma that we needed to. And then, yeah, so that's it. The rest of these have pipes. I just wanted to show how that worked. If your data wasn't already pipe separated, you can use this, replace the delimiter to do that.
Does anybody have any questions about that delimiting piece before we move on? Okay.
Yeah, that can be kind of tricky.
Richard,
to
Tiffany, did I
replace
see you asking?
Yeah,
Mhm.
you're switching back and forth to the data list and the complete list of all the choices. and I'm not sure where the complete list lives.
So the complete list lives on the full options lists tab.
Right here, these are all the options possible for that question.
Okay, so A is the data and B column is the full options.
So no, so there's a difference between what data you want to be
Yeah.
the options in the survey and the data that's actually contained in your data set.
Yeah, I just am, they're on separate pages and I'm not seeing as they're displayed here. I'm not seeing where the
Tim, go to
two
the
are.
Tim, go to the data prep. Okay, so in the question, so if we look at column G here,
Okay.
that's the column, that's the same as column A on the full options list.
Yeah, this
Okay,
is,
so where's the full options list? Is that a separate spreadsheet?
It's a tab. Okay, can you see the bottom where Tim is going from? Can you see is your screen big enough that you're seeing there's pink tabs at the bottom of the spreadsheet?
Almost. I can see the
Tim,
very top edge of a tab, but
and
yeah.
maybe you could make your spreadsheet just a little smaller than your window so it's easier for people to see what you're, do you know what I mean?
yeah, let me see if I can do that.
Yeah, okay.
Can you see that now?
I see tabs now.
Okay, so so again, column G here is the same, is just the real data, which was defined in column A on the full
Okay.
options list.
Okay.
Got it?
Yeah, I see it now.
Okay,
Okay.
cool. Thanks for pointing out that wasn't visible. Anybody else before we move to the next piece? Okay, so now we're going to go to the define headers sheet. And just to be clear, now we've got we've validated the functional fields. So sumApp will recognize all of those fields and know what to do with it. And we've made the data in the columns of your data set, or your extra fields, formatted so that sumApp will read them the way you want them to. And now what we need to do is we need to make all of the headers be formatted correctly so that sumApp knows what kind of field it should be. And another thing that's going to happen at this step is, let's say you had made a Google form and you were collecting your data and you realized that there was a typo somewhere, and you went and changed the option in the form to have the correct spelling. When you do that in Google Forms, it doesn't change all the previous selections of that particular option. So let's say you had national was spelled wrong. Everyone who had already taken the survey will still have national spelled wrong in their cells. So now what you need to do, you've told the full options list how to spell national properly, or it might be more complicated. It might be a whole sentence that you've rearranged somewhere along the line, or it might be that you're using a form that or a spreadsheet and people have just put their own answers in there and they've added variations on something that you want to be always the same. So the other thing that's going to happen in the define headers sheet is you're going to look for those, the header maker is going to look for those differences and give you options to make choices and go clean them up. And we're going to do that one extra column of data at a time until we've marched through all of the data columns. So we go to, so Tim, I'll go ahead.
Okay, so once you've done all of this, once you've validated your data, replace the separators, the delimiters if you need to, and when it's all done, you click the pink button because we got to move it to the proper sheet for the next step. So we just click it. It says, hey, there's data there. This is going to overwrite it with the new data, which we want to do. And we do that. And we end up in this sheet. But first, we're going to look at this one.
Okay. Are you there?
Yeah. Oh, I thought you had more to say.
Oh, okay. Well, hang on. No. So what we're going to do is go through the finished data sheet. So actually just note the emptiness right now. So it says enter question here and make a selection and there's nothing in that cell. So what Tim is going to do is he's going to go into the finished data set and click on the column he wants to work on, and it will put that data into the define header sheet. So he's basically saying, we're working on this column now.
So when we click this pink button, it takes all this data and puts it here, and this is where we start off. Again, I have my little key here, so I know which column is going to be a checkbox or a radio button or whatever. So we just go to the first field after column F, after segments, and you go to this top header field where it has the question survey name, and you double click it. And it puts the question over here. It opens up this drop-down box, and we know that it was going to be a checkbox. So we just select that. It says, hey, do you want to make this a required field in sumApp? I always just say no. Once you're in sumApp, you can always go change it. But generally, I don't make required fields. They're pretty rare. But so I just go through and I say no. And if it said, if you said yes, or here, then the next thing is, how many selections do you want people to choose? If it's a checkbox and say you have 20 options, you only want them to choose 3. You know, like give me your top 3 fields, you would put 3 in here. You can leave it at 0 and it'll allow people to make as many choices as they want. Again, in sumApp, you can go in and change this. So if you don't know the answer for that now, you don't have to, you just leave it at 0. And then so here it says, look, here's the extracted data. This is the data people chose from the data that you put in there. And it gives a list of everything it found, every unique item. And it says, just look carefully, make sure all the options are there.
So can we pause for just a second?
Yeah, first, it took this data, all the data from here, and found the unique list of it. And then this is the unique list, which maybe has all of the data from the full option list and maybe doesn't.
It also, so a thing I was going to add is, this is where you would see, like, let's say national was spelled wrong at one point and then it got fixed, but so you've got 2 variants of national or 2 variants of whatever the data is. This is where you would look at it and say, okay, oh, I see national shows up twice. I need to go into the finished data and do a find and replace to get rid of the wrong one and replace it with the right one. Right, Tim?
Right. So this allows you to do a bunch of kind of, I guess what they call scrubbing of your data to make sure it's all, it's all spelled, like Christine said, spelled the same. National could be spelled 2 different ways. So right here then, so we've got what we call the extracted list from your data, which maybe has all of the options and maybe doesn't. So the next thing is to click the compare list. This is going to compare this list with the list, the full option list that you put in here, and let us know if we have all the options in there or not. And this says, hey, you do have all the options. They're the same. So that's good. So now the question is, do you want these options to show up in sumApp the way they're listed? Because the way you have them listed is the way they're going to show up in the options. Say it's a checkbox, it's going to have this one first, this one second, this one third, and so forth. If you want this in a different order, here's where you rearrange it so that the options will show up the way you want in sumApp. The best way to do that is to go here and arrange this in the way you want it. That way, when you're here, you import that list, and it will have the order that you want it in. And once you have that, you click the run button, and here it tells you, okay, this won't mean anything to you right now, but it will in time. This says, okay, here's what your header is going to look like. It's got the question, which is right here, and then it has all of the options separated by pipes, which is why we had to go do the whole pipe. So we click OK. And this right here then is what we have. It gives us, we want a checkbox. Here's the question that it's going to be called. And here are all the option lists for the checkbox. And you can head and choose as many as you want. That's what the 0 says.
So before we go to the next one, does anybody have any questions about this? Jim? You're muted.
So this is the header that sits in the sumApp
Yeah.
database at this point. It's got everything about the question. Okay.
Mhm. And we'll upload this so you can see what this all looks like when we're done. And then we just start marching through. We just go to the next one. We it turns dark blue to let you know in case you go away and you come back and you're like, hey, where was I? You find the dark blue and then you go to the next one and you double click it. And again, we know it's a checkbox. Set it to, I'm just going no. Okay, so then we compare. It kind of moved down because this has been wrapped, so it pushed everything down. So we compare the list. Again, the lists are the same. So we go, okay. Then we would import the list if, again, we wanted these in a different order. And you can see that they became in a different order.
Tim, I have a question.
Yep.
What if the lists were different?
We'll get to that on the next one.
Okay.
And then we hit run, and we just go, okay. And then we just go to this one. And we double click. So these are the ones that were done. This is the one that we just did. So this means this is the next one.
So I want to just point one thing out before you go to the next one. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
Could you go back to the last tab?
If you need to, if you pooched it up, you just hit the reset button and go back to where you were. And there we are.
So if you put your cursor in cell H1, and then so just to see, and then scroll, can you drag the cell reader thing down? So this is why Tim made the header maker, because you can see that if you had to do that manually with 20 really long questions or really long options in a question set, and then 50 questions that had all those, you would never get it done. It would drive you crazy. It wouldn't be possible. So that's at this level is where the header maker is really crucial for Tim's work. So I just wanted to point that out, that this may seem tedious doing it this way at first, but when you get to that level, it's like, oh my God, how could we do it any other way? Okay, I just wanted to say that, Tim. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So then we go to the next one. And again, it's light blue, so we know it's going to be a checkbox. So we go to checkbox. No. Again, no. All right, we look. So now we compare the list here. And we go, uh-oh. We go, we just, the unique list. So like the extracted list and the unique list from full options, like they're not the same. So we got to deal with that. Otherwise, we can't make the header. So we go, okay. If you have Notepad, it will pop up a little note with these, it's saying these two right here are not in the option list. So we have to do one of two things. We either have to put these two in the option list, or we have to remove these two from the data, depending on what you want. But
So
you have to.
Can I say that one other way?
Sure, go ahead.
So you're saying those two colored ones, they do exist, those options do exist in the actual data set.
Yep, in your data.
So this is kind of the opposite of what we were talking about before. Before we were talking about maybe there are options that are missed. The option list will help you with that, but maybe there are options that you weren't aware of, somehow got added somewhere along the line, and so they do exist in the data. Maybe they should be there, maybe they shouldn't be there, but this is where you find that out and then figure out what to do about that.
Mm-hmm. So
and if you wanted to remove them, you'd go remove them from the finished data, right, Tim?
Right. Yep.
Okay.
But if you do want to keep them, then you would go to you would copy these either from this notepad that popped up, if you have Notepad, or you would copy them from here. You would go to your full options list. Again, we have to make sure we have the right question right here. We go to that question, which is this one, and paste those options in here. And then arrange this in the order we want it. And we would come back here and we would say, okay, import the full options list. And now they're in there. And now we can make the header. And it will include all the data, all the options for what's actually in the data. And then we run it. And then there are just two more fields. This is a text box. The yellow is, the light yellow is the text area. So we click that. It's the text area. We go no. And then there's no option list for it's just a sentence. It's a paragraph. So there's nothing to compare, nothing to import. We just hit run, and that creates. And then we just march through. The orange is a radio button. These all are done the same thing, really. We're just kind of showing that this works for radio buttons as well. There's the option list. We compare to make sure we have them. We do. If we wanted to rearrange them, we would do this. Run.
So Tim, we've got 10 minutes left.
Yep, and this is the last one.
Okay.
And this one was going to be a select box. So no, no, compare, they're the same. And then run. Okay, so now we're done. Everything we've done, all the fields. There are none left. And so now we want to export it. So we go back to here. Now we want to export the data as a CSV so that we can upload it in the sumApp. So we click this button. We just find a place where we want to put it. I'm going to put it on my desktop. Give it a name. Test. And then I go to my desktop and it's right there. So then we go to sumApp. Let me put sumApp in here. We go to our project, whatever that project is, and we go to so in sumApp, if it's a brand new project, there's a default survey. You can add new data to your default survey, or you can remove the default survey if you don't want it. I've removed it just so for clarity here. We go to the launch, the add members, and we click choose, and then we just go find that export we just made, and we click upload. And if you've got a lot of data, it's going to take a little while to upload. So be a little patient. We go here. Here's the survey then. So here you can see the question, the option list, the questions, the option list. Here again, we made a radio button, and here we made a drop-down list. So then we go here. We can see we've added our members. We go click on this link. We go to the survey, and here's the survey with the pre-existing data.
Yay.
So there's a lot there. I hope that didn't overwhelm everybody, but once you get used to it, it moves really fast, and it is really helpful. Okay.
Tim, could you go back to the survey? I just want to point out, you can once you've loaded your data into the survey, you can rearrange your survey questions however
so
you
you
want.
decide
If
you
you want them
this
to be in a
down.
different order.
Yep.
If at this point somebody says, okay, now we need to change that header, that question, you can go in here and change that question. It's not going to lose the data that you have. If you need to go in and change the wording of some of the options, you can change those. It's not going to lose the data that you have. But what you want to remember is that if you've changed the question in sumApp, and so we have situations where data is coming in over the course of several months from like an event registration form. So the event registration form, our clients decided that all the information they wanted to gather had to be on the event registration form, as opposed to we asked that in sumApp, because they're afraid that 2 steps is going to be too much and they have to use their event registration form. So we're downloading the data from the event registration form and we're uploading it into sumApp. And then say 2 weeks later, we get another 100 names from the same form that we're uploading into the same project. So we need to remember, if we have changed the question in sumApp for some reason, it's advisable to wait until you're through loading all your pre-existing data before you start making changes. But sometimes you just don't get to. If you've changed your anything in sumApp, you should note that if you load it the way it was defined, you'll end up with 2 versions of the question, with half the data in one version, half the data in the other version. So you want to be really careful about that. The other thing you want to be careful about is, let's say you've uploaded a bunch of data, say you've uploaded 20 names, and then you've added some more survey responses. Well, okay, you've uploaded data, you've launched sumApp, people have gone in, and if you notice, they can change their responses. So let's say, since you had last talked to them, or since you knew anything, their title has changed, right? So now they have a different title. They've gone in and they've changed their title in sumApp. If you reload their data with their old title, you will get on their nerves. So you have to sort of think about, what am I loading? What's been loaded? What has changed? You have to think really carefully before you start throwing data around, because you can just really give yourself a big headache. So just wanted to say that. And then I don't think we have enough time to talk about, there's some tips and tricks for very advanced stuff. You can take a look at that in the instructions. I want to open it up. We've got 3 minutes, and open it up to another question or 2 before we say goodbye. So if you're sticking around, hold your question maybe to let the people who are not sticking around.
And then here, just the last comment, here you can set your required field and how many choices you want to limit this to. If you want to, you can always do this here in sumApp.
Yeah, if you hadn't already. And you can stop sharing your screen, Tim.
Okay.
So, questions? Kiala, I see you smiling. What was that? Overwhelming for everybody? That was overwhelming for me. Yes. Does anybody have any burning questions? No. Richard.
Yeah, so you have a sumApp with a bunch of fields. If the field doesn't match up, it creates a new one. If it does match up, it just puts the data in the field.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But note that if the data is different, the data from your sheet will overwrite the data in sumApp. So that's why I say you want to be careful. Like if the options, even if the question hasn't changed, if a person has changed their choices, you will be undoing their choices.
So how does it match up? Does it match up by first name, last name, email, all 3, or just one of those, or what?
Just the primary email, the first email.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so if you upload it once with a group and then you have a second group of people that come in later, just upload that second group by itself. This way you won't be overwriting the original group if they've gone in and changed their data on their own.
Okay, other questions?
I got just basically an IT question about what drove the decision to use Excel versus Access.
Well, because Tim just made this for himself, and that's the tool he chose when he started this 5 years ago, because that was what he knew how to do. And,
yeah, I knew VBA, and so that I wrote it in Excel.
Yeah. Okay, but I was just curious.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think what we're going to do is, it's the top of the hour. I want to just have us all sort of unmute ourselves and just say an appreciation for one another. I didn't say that at the beginning, but it's wonderful to see all your faces and to have you have the degree of interest in sumApp and in social system mapping that you have. And so before we close, let's just all unmute and appreciate each other for a moment. And then those who need to jump off can, and those who want to stick around and ask more questions are welcome. So.
That was amazing, Tim.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Tim.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, I just want to say one last thing. If your data is coming from a tool like SurveyMonkey, even to get it into the shape that I had it in takes a lot of work to just get it to that shape. It can come out of SurveyMonkey in a very crazy way that can take a lot of work just to get it into the basic format that we showed you.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Okay.
Anyways.
I'm glad to
You're
have the recording. So
Good. Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Well,
Bye, everybody.
you.
Viert
Thank
euch.
you.
Viert euch.
Bye.
Have a nice time.
Thank you.